let's now continue in our second part. Now the second part has allowed me to continue from the very first part of the emulator, and I've downloaded the system image. I want to click finish on that. So now it's downloaded. I can now say next on this. I can give it a name, a custom name if I wish to change it. And of course, I can always change this later. The emulator performance, I've put left at automatic. Now this is an area, especially when Apps Anywhere and the team in IT services were trying to virtualize this whole setup, that it can be quite complex. But for your purpose, I would recommend just leaving it in automatic. And if errors appear, then we have to troubleshoot the errors. I generally don't play around with any of the settings here. I just simply say finish. It creates the Android virtual device. Give it a moment and let's see what happens here. Okay, so I now have in my pane, which is my virtual devices, there is my first one. You can have as many as you like. And you can see the size on the disk that you'll need. What you might want to do is play through some, delete others, etc, etc. So let's close the AVD manager. We now notice in this drop down I have a particular emulator. I hit play and then watch the build down here, building, configuring build, calculate task. Now we might hit errors because the emulator has all kinds of features and properties because it's simulating being a real Android phone. And if your laptop doesn't have certain other properties, you'll find it'll just stop and have errors. Now, I don't have time in these videos to go through all the types of errors you have. There are Stack Overflow and other kinds of sources which will help you. My choice of using a very basic one, as you can see as it's appearing on screen, usually eliminates the more complex ones, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so what it does is it pops open your emulator on screen, and it has a little bar down the side here. And I'll explain that these buttons on the top right hand corner of your environment, you don't have to keep on closing it down and rerunning it. You can just refresh it, and we'll talk about those options in a moment. So it's still, let's have a look. If you come down here, it is still in the process of building. The numbers on the right hand side down here are still moving. So it's got a problem here, an error has appeared. It said some invocation for Gradle, which we'll talk about in a moment. But let's just leave the errors for the time being and see whether it will actually run. Some of the errors will stop it from working. Some of the errors will be like warnings saying that something is not quite right, but we're still going to run it. Let's see what happens. It's still down at the bottom. It's waiting for the target. It's installing. If you look right at the bottom where I'm moving my cursor, launch app, and give it a moment. Launching app, click to open task window. So if I just keep on observing down at the bottom, you can see it does take some time and something's happening, and there we go. That is my main window, and in the middle of it is the word hello world. So in this particular instance, what you notice is that some errors did appear, but the errors aren't always the type of errors which will stop something from running. So be patient with it. Some of the errors are to do with configuration settings. You don't need to worry. So there is my emulator. Very, very simple emulator with the words hello world. So what you have here is a bar at the top which says my application, a main screen here, and right in the middle your text view with the text.